Hey everyone, Two-Way Tactical Dad here again. Today we're talking about California Senate Bill 948, introduced by Senator Jesse Arriguin. This bill will fundamentally change how you obtain a firearms safety certificate if it reaches the governor's desk. Before we dive in, here's why this video matters right now. SB 948 was just introduced on February 2nd. It is currently sitting in the Rules Committee waiting to be assigned to a policy committee. The earliest it can be acted on is March 5th. That means we have a narrow window right now to stop this before it gains momentum. Once it gets committee approval, it's much harder to kill. So if you care about this issue, contact your representatives. You can come back to this video. I'll wait, I promise. Anyway, let me be direct about what's happening here. The anti-gun crowd can't ban guns outright. So they make exercising your Second Amendment rights so expensive, so time-consuming, and so legally complicated that most people just give up. That's the strategy. Not outright prohibition, incremental prohibition. Death by 1,000 cuts. And SB 948 is the latest attempt to twist the knife. Let's break down what this bill does, how it creates an impossible catch-22, and why Senator Arriguin's justifications don't really hold up. Here's what SB 948 actually does. If passed, new residents moving to California with firearms must obtain an FSC within 60 days and submit it with their mandatory firearms registration. Failure to comply is a misdemeanor. Then, effective July 1st, 2028, anyone applying for a firearms safety certificate must complete a minimum 8-hour training course, including a live fire exercise. Let me put this in perspective. Currently, you take a 30-question written test, pass with, I think, 75%, pay $25. Under SB 948, you would need an 8-hour course with live fire, then the written test. That cost jumps from $25 to potentially $300 to $500 when you factor in course fees, range time, firearm rental, and ammunition. Instead of an hour, you're looking at a full day minimum. Now, here's where this goes from bad to worse. They've created a logical impossibility. You want to buy your first gun in California, you need an FSC. That's the current law. Under SB 948, to get an FSC, you need live fire training, but to do live fire training, you need a gun. But you can't buy a gun without an FSC, so you can start to see the problem. Can't you borrow a gun? No. Under California Penal Code Section 27880, you can loan a firearm to an immediate family member, spouse, parent, child, sibling, grandparent, or grandchild, but the borrower must already have a valid FSC. The only exception is using someone's gun at the range while they remain present the entire time. So your options are to rent a gun at the range, adding $30 to $50 in rental, plus $50 to $100 for ammunition, since any rental range always makes you use their more expensive ammo to avoid Bubba's pissin' hot hand loads. Also, that's where they make their money. Then hope the training instructor is able to provide guns, though the bill doesn't require this, or have families supervise you for 8 hours, assuming they have the time, willingness, and a gun to lend. This isn't about safety, this is about creating an intentional financial and bureaucratic barrier. So let's do the math. Currently, an FSC costs $25. Under SB 948, I'd estimate $150 to $250 for the 8-hour course, based on what I've seen for CCW classes of a comparable duration. $20 to $40 for the range fees, $30 to $50 for a firearm rental, $30 to $80 for ammunition, $20 to $40 for safety gear if you don't own any, plus the $25 test fee. Total $275 to $485, depending on what everything costs, and that's the minimum. In urban areas with limited ranges, probably it would cost more. What other constitutional right costs $400 to exercise? Imagine California requiring $400 in fees before you could vote or speak freely. The Supreme Court would strike that down instantly, but it's the Second Amendment, so apparently constitutional rights are negotiable. Here's who this is really impacting. The single mom in Oakland who can't afford $400 for home defense. The family in rural California hours from the nearest range and 30 minutes from the police. The young professional who can't take the full day off of work. The small business owner who's been robbed 3 times. Minority communities underserved by training and infrastructure. This is a poll tax on the Second Amendment. And that's the point. They know a lot of people won't jump through these hoops. They're counting on it. Every new requirement, every fee increase, every bureaucratic hurdle is designed to make you give up. Today it's an 8-hour course, tomorrow it'll be 16 hours, then annual renewals, then psych evaluations, then proof of need. This is how prohibition happens. Not all at once, but with an endless parade of red tape. Now, let's talk about something Senator Iriguin conveniently ignores: the logistical impossibility of this mandate. California has roughly 300 to 450 shooting ranges statewide. That's for a population of 39 million people. During COVID, California saw 1.26 million firearms purchased in 2020 alone, a 56% increase from 2019. Nationally, 7.5 million people became new gun owners between 2019 and 2021. About 40% of pandemic gun buyers were first-time owners. So do the math. If even a fraction of California's new gun owners need an 8-hour training course with live fire, where exactly are they going to do this? Most ranges don't have dedicated classroom facilities. Most don't have enough instructors certified to teach state-mandated courses. Many ranges are already at capacity on weekends. You're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of people a year needing 8-hour courses. Each course needs classroom space, range time, instructors, firearms for students who don't own any, ammunition, insurance, in one of the most populated states in the country with limited range infrastructure in a state that's actively hostile to opening new shooting ranges. This isn't a safety measure, this is a bottleneck by design. They're creating a demand they know that can't be met. It's the same strategy as requiring abortion clinics to have hospital admitting privileges in areas with no hospitals. You make the requirements sound reasonable, knowing full well that compliance is impossible. And when people can't find available courses, when ranges are booked 6 months out, when instructors charge $500 because demand outstrips supply, Senator Iriguin will claim it's a market problem, not a policy problem, but he designed that market to fail. So we've covered the catch-22, the financial barrier, and the logistical impossibility. Now let's address what people are claiming this bill will actually do. They claim it'll promote responsible gun ownership and is a life-saving measure that prevents gun violence before that happens. Let's break it down a little farther. First, Iriguin says California's historically low rates of violent crime, in addition to having one of the lowest firearms death rates in the nation, demonstrates that our common sense regulations are working. And I've touched on this myth in other videos, and I'll do a deep dive on the drivers of violent crime in another video, but for now, let's take this statement at face value and say, okay, if your existing laws are working, why do you need SB 948? You've just admitted that California already has low firearms death rates. You've already have the background checks, the 10-day waiting periods, FSC tests, safe handling demonstrations, a handgun roster, magazine restrictions, assault weapon bans, and red flag laws. And according to you, it's working. So what problem is SB 948 solving? And here's the answer: none. This isn't about solving a problem. This is about adding another barrier, another hoop, another fee, another way to make gun ownership just difficult enough that more and more people give up. Second, they claim this is about education and safety training. If that were true, California would fund free training programs. They would require ranges to provide firearms to students. They would make training accessible and affordable. They would let children be taught about firearms safety in schools. But they don't. Instead, they mandate training but provide no funding, no instructors, no infrastructure, knowing full well it'll probably cost $400 and take months to schedule. That's not education, that's just another financial barrier to add on top of all the rest. Brady's Chris Brown says SB 948 prevents gun violence before it happens. How? Show me the mechanism. Show me the data that says an 8-hour course for law-abiding citizens prevents violence that the current FSC written test doesn't prevent. You can't, because it doesn't exist. This is security theater, feel-good legislation that sounds reasonable to outsiders until you examine the logistics in depth. And let's talk about the loophole they claim to be closing. A family moves to California with firearms they've owned for years, handled safely, and possibly even received firearms training elsewhere. California says that's not good enough. They need to pay the training fees and take an 8-hour course within 60 days or face criminal charges. How is that promoting safety? That's punishing people for exercising their rights. Not to mention, how will someone who has just moved to the state be able to find a class within that 60-day window in an already dramatically underserved shooting community? 45 states have no FSC or permit requirements to purchase firearms, and none have an 8-hour training mandate to purchase a firearm. Some states require training for concealed carry, but we're talking about basic ownership here. California, under SB 948, would have the most restrictive firearms purchase law in the nation. Senator Arriguin claims that California's low firearm death rates prove that gun control works, but he's deliberately confusing correlation with causation. You know what actually reduces gun violence? Let's talk about what the data actually shows. Poverty drives violence. Lack of economic opportunity drives violence. Failed education systems drive violence. Untreated mental illness drives violence. Gang activity drives violence. Refusing to prosecute violent criminals drives violence. California has lower rates than many states, not because of gun laws, but because California has a higher median income, better funded schools in wealthy areas, and lower rates of rural poverty compared to states like, say, Mississippi or Louisiana. When you control for socioeconomic factors, the gun laws don't correlate with lower violence. You want to reduce gun deaths, invest in mental health services, prosecute violent offenders instead of releasing them, address economic desperation that drives people to gangs, fund community policing that builds trust instead of confrontation, and fix the education systems in underserved communities. But that's hard work. It's expensive, and it takes years to see results. And most importantly, it doesn't give Sacramento more control over law-abiding gun owners. So instead, they pass SB 948 and claim they're making you safer while ignoring everything that actually causes violence. And let's hope they don't pass it. But like I was saying, this bill isn't about safety. This is about making legal gun ownership so expensive, time-consuming, and bureaucratically complex that people give up. Senator Arriguin also introduced SB 704 last year, the background checks on firearms barrels, which are useless without the serialized part of the firearm, and building that at home is already illegal in California. And now he wants an 8-hour training, creating an impossible catch-22 for first-time buyers. Every year a new restriction, and every restriction can be made to sound reasonable when taken on its own. But stack them all together and you've created a regulatory framework to effectively work towards prohibition. What's next? Psychological evaluations, home inspections, proof of good moral character, annual recertification. California Democrats have already proposed these. They claim each law is about safety. They claim it's reasonable. They claim it won't affect law-abiding gun owners. And then next year they're back. Why? Because the previous one didn't work? No. Because this is about eliminating a political constituency that votes against them. Let's talk about what California gun owners actually are. They're a minority. About 15 to 18% of Californians own firearms. Compare that to the 32% national average. And who are these gun owners? According to California's own data, 65% are Republican or have no party preference. Only 28% are Democrats. 43% of gun owners in the state are over 60. These are people who vote against California Democrats consistently and reliably. So here's the real strategy. Every new restriction reduces that number. Every fee and regulatory hurdle prevents a new gun owner. Every year, fewer gun owners means fewer single-issue Second Amendment voters. It's not about safety, it's about political demographics. Target a political minority, make exercising their rights prohibitively expensive and legally complex, reduce their numbers, and reduce their political influence and win more elections. Over 1 million guns were sold in California in 2020 alone. Think about that. Despite everything, millions of Californians still want to exercise this right. They passed background checks, waited 10 days, took the FSC test, followed every rule, and Sacramento looks at that and sees a problem. Not a crime problem, a political problem. These are people who might vote for the other team. So hit them with another $400, another 8 hours, some other barrier. Make enough of them give up and maybe they stop voting on this issue. Or stop voting in California at all. This is what persecution of a political minority looks like. When you can't just ban what they do outright. You make it expensive, you make it complicated, you make it take time and resources most people don't have, and you do it in the name of safety, so that anyone who objects sounds unreasonable. It's brilliant, really, and unfortunately, it's working. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but SB 948 clearly has major constitutional problems, and California knows this. They know it'll be challenged. They know it'll probably be struck down, but they don't care. It takes years to litigate and costs gun rights groups millions. And in the meantime, it's a law affecting people. Even if it is struck down, they'll pass a slightly different version. This is lawfare, exhausting and bankrupting the opposition through endless legal battles. So what can you do? SB 948 hasn't passed. It hasn't even been assigned to a committee yet. We're in the critical window right now where public pressure matters most, and your voice matters. Contact your state senator and assembly member today. Tell them to vote no on SB 948. This bill is sitting in the Rules Committee waiting for assignment. The more opposition they hear now before committee hearings, the better chance we have of killing it early. When it goes to committee, submit written testimony. Personal stories matter more than statistics. Show up if you can. Support gun rights organizations, FPC, GOA, CRPA, SAF. They're all preparing to fight this. They need funding for legal challenges. Even $20 helps. And spread the word. Share this video. Most people don't understand these laws, and education is key. And as always, vote. Senator Origuin and lawmakers pushing this need to feel consequences. Find out where your representatives stand and vote accordingly. Well, sorry for another grim episode, guys. I promise I'll have much more fun, lighthearted shooting content and historical stuff coming soon. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you'd like to help out the channel, I also have a Patreon set up, and every tier gets you into the Discord server, and I am chronically online and always happy to talk about guns, gear, and whatever. I'll put a link in the description. As always, I've been the 2A Tactical Dad, and as I like to say, we could all be a little more free and a lot more self-reliant. All it takes is a little responsibility.